And my father was really worried about me giving up being a doctor and making film, because for the obvious concern, there was no career to be had at that time, really. And but I don't think I'd still be making films if I didn't have that part of myself, because first of all, you have to have a curiosity, as we all do, about human beings, but you're also looking at a human being from every possible point of view.
My childhood, my mother, I want them back. I want them back.
I know it's a place meaningful to you, and where you'll soon be as well. Why is Cannes special to you?
I first went there on the jury. I've been on the jury 3 times now, over three different decades, and it was it's one of the great things. I got addicted to it simply because it's like film camp, and you must know that you're there with a large jury and people from many different disciplines, from many different parts of the globe, and you see films of which you know nothing because they're seen for the first time. So there's a sort of almost a primary virgin experience a little bit. You bring nothing into the screening room. The first time I did it was with Bill Goldman, the screenwriter, and he said, let's not read anything about the film. Let's not even know who the director is. And it's an amazing experience to see a film in that way. So that was, and then what you have to do is you have to articulate your feelings about the film and the worth or otherwise of the film. And that's a really a great experience, because you're learning just increases enormously. So as a jury member, that's a big thing. And then to have your film shown there, and to get that feedback almost immediately as to the worth or otherwise of the film, is a really interesting thing, because a film doesn't exist the moment. A film only exists in the audiences, whoever ever cares to see it. It's for them to make up, or we as audiences to make of it what they will, and then to start getting that feedback, having seen it. And the third thing is to show it in that cinema with about 2,000 people with impeccable sound and screening is another big thing. So it's kind of optimal cinema, really. So I'm the moment that they said, okay, we're happy to show this film here, I jumped at it. I was very happy.
She's from a place of abundance. This is our destiny.
This grand saga where water is scarce and oil is so sought after, I mean, it feels to me like it must come out of some of your own planetary concerns.
Yes, that's true. And I think, I think it applies to any time. That you could argue, depending where you are in history and where you are in time or space, there is a sense of potential chaos and a fallen world. People often talk about that. People are talking about it now as information is traveling much more rapidly now. So it's always there in the zeitgeist. In terms of the environmental collapse, that's something that, like it or not, whatever you think about it, it is a reality that's measurable, very accurately measurable. I mean, we shot this film. Most of it's outdoors, and we would there was a lot of rain. We would have apps that we'd look at every day with our lead ADs and whatever. We'd look at apps, and we'd say, and the apps would say that where we were, wherever location it was, let's say between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m., there would be rain, and then the skies would clear. What we'd do in the morning, having looked at those apps, we'd know that at 11 a.m. we had big tents built, and we would have shots prepared for the moment that the rain would come, where we could do inserts or shots between that time. I am shocked to the degree to which that was predictable by apps, basically, which were aggregated by the Norwegians. But somehow they collected all the information they could get. It literally look up the sky, and at 11 a.m. you put your hand out and you feel the first drops of rain. And then you finish the shooting, come out at 1 p.m. and you say, oh, there's the sun, let's shoot. Now, if we can predict it to that level, we can predict all the catastrophes, all the shifts in temperature. That's on the scientific level. And just someone who's lived as long as lucky to live as long as I have, and having a farm, growing up in a rural area, visiting the Barrier Reef on a documentary in the early 70s, where I got to know one particular bit of reef off a beach really, really well. We were shooting this documentary as young filmmakers, and then go back 40 years later, which I did, and go back to that same beach where I spent 2 months and diving that same reef and seeing the difference in 40 years was shocking to me. That's purely anecdotal. So all of that stuff is there, and it has to be expressed in any story you tell about the world, and so on with so many other things. Sorry for the elaborate answer, but that's what it is to me, and that's just one dimension of this basically post-apocalyptic world. It's where all the institutions fall apart. You know, the police, the hospitals, the education, the power grids have gone down. The technology that we use now, we couldn't be having this conversation if the power grid goes down. If the satellites basically helping us with this, or the fiber optics underneath the oceans, or however we manage to be looking at each other, talking, if that goes down, we have to go back to earlier technology. Vehicles become, combustion engine, fossil fuels thing, and so on and so on. That's all inherent in the world that we're trying to design in these stories.
I know you really rebuilt this entire fleet of vehicles, but I love the idea of you guys opening up a garage somewhere and taking the war rig out from 10 years ago or whatever it was. I think he called it the Dirty Dozen.
So everything has to work for real, and it's very important when particularly when your main, if you like, location for these films is on the move. In other words, so much of it on vehicles, on bikes and whatever, and a lot of them. And it's really, and they're, in a sense, they're characters. At least the vehicles are an extension of the characters. And you see that right through the Mad Max films. The V8 Interceptor is an extension of Max. Furiosa ultimately has that vehicle we call the Cranky Black, where she basically carjacks from Scrotus. That is an expression of who she is at the end of the movie. Dementis has that 3-bike chariot with sort of a marauder of a great horde who ends up at Gastown and ends up in that in a vehicle more suitable to, not being mobile across vast tracts of land, but a big, brutal vehicle that's 6 foot. And so on with the war rig, Praetorian Jack. And when he gets together with Furiosa, it becomes a double war rig. All of them are extension of characters. On the one hand, and they're practical, and on the other thing, they're highly functional because they have to keep on the road, otherwise we stop shooting, and they have to be safe. So that whole thing is, there's a lot of hidden effort, unseen effort that goes into that. It's a military exercise. I mean, on the shooting crew, there are over 1,000 people on the set on every day just to keep all that stuff going.
The hold this world has on your imagination, do you feel like it's always there, sort of, that it's a place that you just your mind is going to return to forever?
To some degree, only because you spend so much time in it. But I think, when I was a kid, when I talked about growing up, it was generally playing in every way, using your hands and so on. And in a way, you were already telling stories. Because I grew up with my twin brother, we're not identical, but we spent all of our time together into early adulthood. We went to university. We were in every class together all the way through university, at primary school and infant school and so on. And we were always telling stories because we had a different world point of view because we're not identical twins. And so it's a lifelong habit. And as in the past, I was able to do things with my hand. I don't do anything with my hands anymore. I can't, there's always someone who can type faster than me. There's always someone who can cut faster than me. There's always someone who can operate a camera much better than I can. I can't do any of that. So it's all in the head, but I'm habituated to stories. So not only the Mad Max world, there's other stories that I've got that I'll probably never have time to even tell. But it just happens now. It's just how. Look, when I talk to musicians, and particularly composers and songwriters, there's always music in their head. They can't help it. And I think it's the same thing with storytellers. So certainly my head goes and holidays or visits the Mad Max world, the Wasteland, but also there are other parts as well. I think I'm mentally healthy enough to still be present in the real world. Otherwise, I'd worry about myself.
Well, it has always struck me as funny that you're such a thoughtful, sensitive person, and this is what comes out of your mind. I wouldn't, you don't look like somebody who has thought of the war boys.
To be honest, it's only in recent years that I have come to realize how significant having a medical education influenced the films I make. I don't think I'd be, when I first decided to make films, I know my father in particular, who had no education, he migrated from Greece as a child, and he only had 1 year formal education. All of us became either doctors and lawyers, in my family, simply in response to that. And my father was really worried about me giving up being a doctor and making film, because for the obvious concern, there was no career to be had at that time, really. And but I don't think I'd still be making films if I didn't have that part of myself, because first of all, you have to have a curiosity, as we all do, about human beings, but you're also looking at a human being from every possible point of view, as organs, as individuals, sometimes looking down a microscope and seeing their cells, or in an autopsy, or looking at people in terms of their epidemiology or the anthropologically, and in every level, psychologically, in every way, you're looking at the human being. And that's what you do as a storyteller. And you're looking at systems and how they work. You're looking at problem solving. You're looking at coming up with optimal remedies for something when you're exhausted, and so on. All of that goes to help inform filmmaking, and perhaps because you're dealing almost always with people in extremis. If you're working in emergency, it's usually when people are at extreme points of their life, some accident, or even childbirth. That they're there, if they go well, are one of the great things about being human. So you see people that had a big influence on me, and it was part of my natural curiosity. That's probably one of the reasons that I'm interested in those sort of things, and it does creep into the work. And to the extent that you're traumatized by being in those worlds, and you have to process it, and I think storytelling helps that. I know my twin. He just retired after 50 years of being a doctor, and he was a really good doctor. The best of it. And we were talking. We would talk on the phone so often about patients he had, his observations or whatever. And it was a way, I realized, of both of us processing the chaos of the world and what he experienced and how he dealt with it. I like to think that that's what I'm still doing in a way.
Is it true you storyboarded this years ago? Is that right?
We didn't storyboard Furiosa. We did concept art on Furiosa because we storyboarded Fury Road in detail. We did some previs on Fury Road. On this film, we storyboarded, but we also did a more sophisticated form of previs devised by Guy Norris, the second unit director. We've been working, and stunt coordinator. We've been working together for 41 years now. He started on Road Warrior at age 21, and so again the tools had changed in the almost decade since we did Fury Road. So but there was concept art. We were going to do this as an anime with a wonderful. We've written the screenplay for the cast and the crew, and then we said, let's turn it into an anime. We worked with Mahiro Maeda, a great anime director, and he did some concept art of early Dementus, and it was the first image I saw of Dementus with his teddy bear, and that teddy bear became significant in the story. So a lot of that preparation was done, but only as a way of illustrating for us. As I said, when we realized it was a good story, we were going to make it as an anime, but I had no thoughts of making it into a feature film. But when Fury Road was delayed yet again by rains, there's no point in making an anime before we made Fury Road. By the time we made Fury Road and got through all the history of that, we decided to make it as a feature film because the whole team put together for the anime was no longer available. So we said, let's do it as a feature.
The amount of cuts of the kinetic energy of the visual language in Furiosa to me is extraordinary. I mean, does it? I don't know how do you do it? Are you able to keep all of these edits in your mind as you go?
I definitely have a stronger visual memory than I say have a verbal memory. I know, so I tend to remember moving images very well. I remember static compositions, like interesting paintings or graphics. But so I can quote you know, some of the lines of dialogue in the movie, but I know virtually every cut of virtually every movie I've made, certainly, and in many cases, the cuts of some of my favorite movies that I've watched over again. So that's just my neurology has become more muscular the more I get into the practice of it. You know, if I was a musician or a juggler, I would have a different neurology, but that's how it sort of my neural pathways have developed. So I am able to keep it in my head, but a big key is, I've been very lucky to be working with my partner Margaret Seiksel, who is not that interested in cinema, but has a real knack for really understanding the rhythms of cutting, and that's been very, very helpful for me because she can see things that I don't pick up. She can see repetitions, not obvious repetitions, but repetitions in rhythm and remedies to what could be problems that it's one thing to identify a symptom. Oh, this is too slow. This is confusing. It's another thing to actually find what the cause is. That's more difficult to do. Oh, it's too slow because of this or that. What's very difficult to do, and very few people can really do it consistently, is to say, this is the remedy of these problems. And often it's a solution which solves by one gesture many issues. That's in all design, actually. If you're talking about a bit of furniture or a bit of music or a bit of architecture or a car or any device, if you can find one thing that solves many issues, then it's the elegant solution. So I'm lucky enough to be working with people like that.
There will always be war, but to get home, Furiosa fought the world.